China's telco companies are gradually shifting to Chinese CPUs. Telecom giants switch hundreds of thousands of their servers to homegrown CPU platforms. Chinese telecom companies are gradually switching to domestic CPU platforms by raising their procurement of servers based on CPUs from Huawei, Homegrown, or Longshan, reports state-controlled Global Times. Purchases by telco giants like China Telecom, China Mobile, and China Unicom significantly support developers of Chinese-made processors, and the countries strive for self-sufficiency. But there is a big catch. China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology is telling the country's telecommunications providers to get rid of foreign-owned chips in their networks and infrastructure by 2027. The order issued earlier this year means China's telecom firms must determine how many chips must be replaced and develop clear timelines for that process. China's largest telecom firms like China Mobile, China Telecom, and China Unicom are state-run. Each of these firms could have thousands of foreign chips in their systems at cloud computing data centers, according to the report. These servers are also used in key telecoms operations in the country. Financial Times reported that China is also phasing out foreign chips on older government computers and replacing them with Chinese ones instead. Firms like Huawei, Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, SMIC, or HiSilicon stand to gain from China's broader push toward domestic-owned processors. U.S. chip industry. Biden's 2022 CHIPS and Science Act has allowed the Department of Commerce to grant Apple and Nvidia chipmaker TSMC $11.6 billion and Intel $19.5 billion in loans and grants to build out and increase production in the U.S. The White House is expected to announce similar funding for Samsung next week in a move that would reportedly bring Samsung's total U.S. investment to $44 billion. Everyone wants a G-series server with a Chinese CPU inside. China Telecom plans to acquire 156,000 servers, 67.5% of which are G-series and equipped with Chinese-made CPUs. This is a substantial shift from 4 years ago when only 19.9% of the company's servers used domestic CPUs, and Intel Xeon processors dominated with a 79.4% share, according to Global Times. The G-series is a designation for a server based on a CPU, or maybe even two, formally developed in China. China Mobile is also ramping up its support for local processors. Of their 13 server procurement tenders, 10 are designated for G-series projects, highlighting the company's commitment to domestic CPUs. The report says the proportion of Chinese CPUs in China Mobile's PC server acquisitions has increased from about 21% in 2020 to 43.5% recently. China Unicom has seen a similar trend, with a notable rise in demand for domestic processors since 2020. The company has increasingly used Chinese-made CPUs, particularly models like Huawei's Kunping 920 and Sugun's Homegrown 7165 and Homegrown 7185. Because the U.S. government has set rather strict export rules for selling high-performance processors to Chinese entities, which for now have little to do with telco giants, except, of course, blocked Huawei, but even in this case, there have been exceptions made. Chinese telecom companies are switching to domestic processors to ensure that they are not left without compute performance they need if the U.S. imposes stricter sanctions against China. In addition, the telco giants are also seemingly trying to make their infrastructure indifferent to the instruction set architecture, ISA, of the CPUs that power it. Global Times notes that China Telecom's latest round of procurements included the selection of various processors, including x86 CPUs and domestic CPU architectures such as ARM, C86, Long Arch, Yongfeng, and SW.